Hello, welcome back to the Black Doctors Podcast. I am Steven, your host, coming to you with another throwback episode. This week, we're going to look back at an episode from the first season of the podcast featuring Dr. Brent Stephens. He's an orthopedic surgeon and was completing his residency when I was a medical student at Howard. So we go way back. He's doing some pretty incredible things, and we talk about his nonprofit organization he's pretty involved in, probably overdue for coming back on the show, honestly, and we can see what he's been up to most recently because he's done a bunch of stuff. I am kind of mixing in some of these throwback episodes just because of my schedule. I am currently working in the cardiothoracic ICU. It's super busy. Then I have a month of the surgical ICU since I am finishing up fellowship. So have some fantastic episodes coming up with some incredible physicians. Also have a pretty amazing episode on medical ethics for later this month featuring Dr. Italo Brown. He sent me an article that we're going to dissect. I am throwing this episode up after working today in the ICU, but I did spend this weekend in lovely, lovely Hartford, Connecticut, attending the Student National Medical Association's annual medical education conference. There's a variety of people that listen to this show. If you are involved in graduate medical education as a faculty or program director, and you are concerned about recruiting diversity to your residency program, and you're not attending the SNMA conference, you're definitely missing out. It's the largest conference that is geared towards the needs of underrepresented in medicine minority students, and just a fantastic place to go and meet people and meet future applicants to your program. I was there representing the University of Chicago Medical Center, a fantastic institution. Did my residency there. I'm back now during fellowship, and we sent, it was probably a solid 30 people, residents, attendings. We had, I think, 3 folks from the two orthopedic surgery attendings, 2 ortho residents, a bunch of emergency medicine physicians and residents, the anesthesia and general surgery associate program directors were there, along with a bunch of their residents. What else? One of the vascular surgery and chairs of DEI in the surgery department was there. So we were just rolling deep. It was a good time. Obviously great to catch up with people. I saw Dr. Milam, a good friend from Mayo, anesthesiologist, and a bunch of people that I've actually interviewed on the show. So it was awesome, full circle. And then I can't not mention the amazing students and residents that came up and introduced themselves and were like, "Oh, hey, I recognize your voice." And I listened to the podcast because it really was just incredible to get that feedback and to meet all of you in person. Thank you so much, everybody that approached me, that shared, that you learned something from the show, because it is definitely what gives me the motivation to keep getting on here every week and putting these episodes together. Thanks for hanging out. We're going to jump into this throwback episode, and then stay tuned for the next couple of weeks as I'll have some new episodes, and then definitely by the time I'm finished with fellowship, I'll get back to it and bring you some new and improved programming. Without further ado, let's jump back into this interview. Talking with Dr. Brent Stephens, orthopedic surgeon. I'm going to remaster the audio because this is from the very first season when I still didn't know how to record or edit audio, and so I'm going to tweak it a little bit and hopefully make the audio a little better than it was when this first launched back in 2020. The idea for this podcast was born from this campaign I launched back in February, #MakeBlackHistory. I am continuously inspired by the excellence represented by my peers who've overcome so many incredible obstacles to reach the pinnacle of their success. This podcast forum will provide an avenue to organize these stories for others to listen to and to learn from. This podcast is our stories told by us. Welcome to the Black Doctors Podcast. I'm privileged to have Dr. Brent Stephens join me today. He's an orthopedic surgeon currently practicing in Florida. Our paths actually crossed during part of his training. I'm so glad to reconnect. Dr. Stephens, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Let's start off. We'll just ask a couple random questions. What are you listening to these days?
It never changes for me. It's been the same since high school. It's T.I., Outkast. Typically, that's the playlist, man. I'm from Atlanta, so T.I. is always a staple. Andre is always a staple. Sometimes I'll throw on Goody Mob just to bring myself way back.
Love it. What do you play in the operating room?
That I can't blast Jeezy in the operating room. I would get fired in about a day. So honestly, and I can't think to it. So Sam Smith is actually one of my favorite artists.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Hamilton. So I typically have one of those two, or put it on the Anthony Hamilton station, and whatever they play, something that kind of vibe in the OR.
That's what's up. Yeah, I got my my OR music. It's usually oldies. I do Motown. Everybody loves Motown. So.
Like my brother, man, he loves some oldies, man.
So, Dr. Stephens, you're an orthopedic surgeon. You work in Florida. Tell me a little bit about your current practice. What types of cases you do? Is it a private hospital, academic? Just tell us more about that.
So I'm a shoulder and elbow specialist. So, after orthopedic surgery residency, I subspecialized in shoulder and elbow. Just in general, I've been out for about 5 years. So I've been working for a hospital for 5 years, do a lot of shoulder replacements, rotator cuff repairs. It's kind of one of those newer specialties in orthopedics that a lot of people don't do. So it's a nice little niche to have where I am. Yeah, it's nice. It's different working for a hospital than private practice, but it's a good, nice little guarantee. So you don't have to worry about the day to day and the grind of trying to find patients all the time.
Where did you do your fellowship?
So I did it in Tampa. After Howard residency, I went to Tampa for a year. It's a doctor named Dr. Frankel. So he's kind of a legendary shoulder surgeon. So it's one of the top programs in the country. Actually, I was his first Black fellow he ever had. And the fellowship's been there for 15, 20 years. So I was the first. I mean, he's a really cool dude, really cool guy. But I was literally his first Black fellow. And so I remember getting there, and it was different. It was different, but it was great. I mean, they treat me like family. So
did you introduce him to Jeezy in the OR?
Yeah, he wasn't hearing that.
That's awesome. So, what is a typical day like for you at work?
Post-COVID actually has been crazier, but in general, like this month, I'm doing about 60 surgeries.
Wow.
And so I've been even crazier. So like last Friday, typical day. Just say tomorrow, typical day. 7:30 cut time. So I have to get to the hospital about 7 o'clock in the morning, see the patients, talk to the family before surgery. Like tomorrow, I have 4 shoulder replacements. Each one takes about 2 hours.
Jeez.
Hour and a half, 2 hours for the case. And so I'll do the case, talk to the family after the case, see the next patient, do the next case. So I have 4 of those tomorrow, and I'll have one room. So it's case, wait for an hour, case, wait for an hour. And I'll be done about 7 o'clock at night. But like Fridays, I have 2 rooms. So it's called flip rooms. So I have 2 rooms going like back to back. So while I'm doing surgery in one room, the next room is getting ready. So Friday, I have 8 surgeries. So I can do twice as many surgeries because while one room is going, they're getting the patient ready in the next room. So I literally go room to room to room to room to room with a break of 5 minutes in between. Now that'll go 7 to 5, but I do twice as many cases.
Wow. So Fridays are the money days.
Yeah, it's a money day. That pays the rent there.
And then who do you work with? You have residents or physician assistants or?
Yeah, I have a nurse practitioner that I work with in the operating room. And so nurse practitioner, I have 2 scrub techs that hand the instruments off. So each time I go to a case, it's me, the nurse practitioner, and 2 scrub techs for every surgery.
Okay.
And so it's nice. It's a nice setup.
And then when you're not in the operating room, I assume you have clinic days also. How does the clinic work, and how does that feed patients into your OR?
Yeah, so I have clinic on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So 3 days of clinic, 2 days the operating room. And the clinic days are the days that feed the operating room. Like today, I see 40 patients a day in clinic. So that's 20 in the morning, 20 afternoon. So it's a hustle. And so clinic starts at 8:30. Every patient has a 10-minute slot. So ortho, we're not known for having these long conversations. We're known for like, you have shoulder pain. I don't want to hear about your heart, your lungs, your leg, your head. I want to hear only about your left shoulder.
Right.
So it keeps things streamlined. So I can see 40 patients. You see the post-op, you see, surgery, people that need surgery. So it's a nice mix. And everybody's great, man. Yeah, it's good.
What is your favorite thing about what you do?
everybody says, I'm sure it's pretty cliche for doctors, I make people better. But honestly, seeing people really get back to their quality of life. Ortho, we're doers, we're builders. So when they come to me, for example, like the four that I have tomorrow, one lady literally cannot lift her arm up. Like she lifted her arm up like 15 degrees. She can't use it for anything. She pretty much is using one arm the past 5 years
Wow.
because she has bad arthritis. She's got a rotator cuff tear. So all the muscles in her shoulder are torn and she has arthritis. So she's like 75, kind of wants to go out, wants to do stuff, but she cannot, she's losing her independence. So I know that 3 months from now, she's going to come back doing her own thing. I can get dressed. I don't need somebody to help. My kids don't have to stay with me to help me all the time. So it's that level of quality of life that I see that I'm restoring that kind of gives you a sense of pride. I did
Yeah,
that.
that's
So
awesome.
nothing can kind of replace that feeling when they come in and say, "Doc, thank you so much. You did this for me." And she's like, "Wow, like I really did that." So it's obviously it makes you feel it's self gratifying.
Yeah,
So it's good. It's good.
definitely sounds very rewarding. Let's go back in time. When and where did you decide to become a physician, and how did you come to that decision?
So a little bit about my background. I played baseball in college. Don't make me cry because I thought I was gonna play professional. That didn't happen. So
Oh man.
I hurt my knee. So what happened was my senior year of college, supposed to get drafted pretty high in baseball. I was playing in college. Hurt my knee. They thought tore my ACL. I did rehab, and like you said, God, when God has things planned for you, you never know. Like I always tell my dad always tells me, I started shadowing the doctor that did my surgery. He was like, "Hey man, what's your plans after college?" I was like, "Get drafted." He's like, "Well, you never know. How about you come shadow me?" And I was kind of pre-med, but I really wasn't. I was kind of like, yeah, maybe we'll see what happens. But after shadowing him for 3 months, he would show me how to do stuff. It just really opened my eyes, and that's when I was like, I kind of wanted to be a doctor, but I knew I wanted to be a surgeon. And at that point, I realized, like, funny enough, becoming a physician was actually more important than becoming a professional athlete at that point in my life.
Huh.
And so even when I finished college and I didn't get drafted, but I had chances to play or get signed independent, I just said, no, I actually want to go to med school. I got into med school. So instead of trying to go the professional route, I just said, you know what, I'm done with baseball. I'll just go to med school. So that really
Wow.
kind of changed my life there. Yeah.
And you were set up in terms of the prerequisites and the grades to matriculate straight on into medical school.
Yeah, I was. So I majored in business, funny enough, and but I minored in chemistry. So I took all the pre-med classes, but I had a business degree as well. And so a little bit different route than most people. So I took all my prereqs, and then the only one that's different than pre-med is really biochem 1 and 2. Took those a minor in chemistry since I pretty much was that far along anyway, and then took business classes because they were fun. I think they were more interesting than doing science. It was kind of a different major, but it actually added a lot of diversity, or not diversity, but added a lot of uniqueness to my application, and I think that's what helped me get into med school.
And I know you mentioned this on some previous posts on your Instagram at the Surgeon Story, but you said there were some advisors and guidance counselors that weren't the most helpful when you were kind of making that decision.
Man, oh man, yeah. So I still tell so many athletes to this day, like, and then what's funny when you tell one athlete, and I put that story out there, I literally had about 7 or 8 young athletes DM me and tell me
Hmm.
the same thing happened to me. So what happened was so I got a scholarship to go to Kentucky, University of Kentucky out of high school. All right. So I was a pretty big prospect coming out of high school, and I went to private school. So I had a pretty good education, good background. So my freshman year, you meet with their advisor, academic advisor. And I'd already said, maybe med school. If I don't go play baseball, maybe med school. And I said that. I didn't really mean it, but I still said it. And in my heart, maybe we'll see as a backup plan. And I meet with my advisor. I will never forget this. Like to this day, the first time I meet my advisor, I'm sorry, no, it wasn't the first time. The first time I met my advisor, but it was actually half into the year. So second semester of freshman year.
Hmm.
Um, Freshman year, I had like a three. My first semester, I had like a 3.7. Right. So obviously, I could do the work.
Right.
So I meet my advisor. I said, hey, I mapped this out with my dad. I'm a business major, but I'm going to minor in chemistry. That way, I have my pre-med classes, so I can go to business. If I want to go to business, I can do med school. If I don't get drafted, but I want to have my options. Solidify multiple options, so I have a backup plan. I can do different things. the pre-med advisor, without even knowing me at all, and seeing that I had a 3.7, or 3.6, 3.7 my first half of freshman year, was like, it's too hard as an athlete. You're doing too
Wow.
much. I just think that maybe you should, and this is what I've seen it happen to so many young athletes. Maybe you should start off undecided, right? And then take all these PE intro to, basket weaving,
Right.
all these intro level courses. But what students don't realize is, if you start off like that, so your first semester you're taking BS classes, or your first year, you're already a whole year behind any pre-med, any engineering, any of those the things that take a lot of discipline to get through in 4 or 5 years. You're a
Right.
year behind. So by the time you figure out you want to do it, let's say second year, you're like, I got to be in college for 6 years now to get caught
Right.
up. And so then I've seen so many kids get kind of pushed away from things like medicine, pushed away from things like engineering, and kind of persuaded to go in other fields, because now you're general studies for 2 years. And then when you declare a major, you can only declare a couple of majors and get done in 4 years.
Right.
So I've seen them do that to so many people. And keep in mind, when you're an athlete, you only have 4 years of eligibility. After 4 years, you got to pay for your own education.
Yeah.
So what do you have? You go into, I'm not knocking any major, right? Every major is a good major. Any college degree is worthwhile. But sometimes you may have said, I want to be engineering, but you can't. You have to start off engineering. I want to be pre-med. You have
Right.
to start off pre-med, or you'll never catch up, or you'll end up 5, 6 years, and then kind of, man, I don't want to do this. It's too hard. It's too hard to work. And so yeah, so she said, you can't. You should try to do this intro. She planned my whole schedule out. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm pre-med. We went back and forth for about 5 or 10 minutes. I was like, look, I'm done with you. So I just left. I walked out the office like, don't ever
Wow.
talk to me. And luckily, my dad is a judge, so he has a lot of friends that are physicians. And he called some of his physicians, and they're kind of like, "Hey, man, look, don't worry about that. You can be business and pre med." So one of my friends, dad's friends, did a business degree in pre med, kind of, he was my mentor after that, telling me what classes to take.
Right.
So that's why to this day I'm big into mentoring, because so many kids who don't even realize they're getting knocked off the path before they start walking. It happens so often, especially to our kids.
Yeah. That is that's huge, man. There's gatekeepers out there, and you had
Yeah.
your head screwed on straight, but so many other people that aren't as strong academically, man, they come in there and hit that
hmm
roadblock. There's no way that they're gonna, progress.
Absolutely, man. It's bad. I mean, I'll tell you this real quick story of a kid. He really broke my heart. He's at Emory University. So, and we'll probably get into it, but I have a nonprofit, right? But we met him at Emory. We were doing like a little symposium. This kid was a fourth year in college, and we're talking about going to med school. He's like, "Yeah, I was pre med, or I wanted to be pre med, but it was too late, and they said my GPA wasn't good enough, and I should try to find something different to do." So instead of being pre med, he changed to, man, something else. It was outside the sciences, and I forgot what it was. It wasn't. It was a kind of a different major. And he
Mhm.
was a senior, but he really like had a passion for medicine. But he's like, yeah, I couldn't cut it. And we were like, well, what happened? He's like, well, my GPA was too low, and they said like, third year I probably wouldn't get into med school, so I should probably change to something different. So I don't have to go back. Like, what was your GPA? Well, I only had a 3.5. I said, what?
Oh my at Emory.
He said, "Yeah, I had a 3.5, and my advisor told me that I'm just behind. I probably won't get in, so I should probably pick a different major, or not, take
Wow.
some other classes and go a different route." He literally changed everything, and by the time he's a fourth year, so we're trying to convince him to go get a post back to get to med school, and he's like, "Well, no, I'm already this long. I'm gonna graduate next year, so I'm just gonna finish." I'm like, "You had a 3.5 at
Jeez.
Emory," but and he didn't, but he had nobody else to tell him that that's crazy. And
Wow.
so many, I've seen that so often, like that. And even kids who have a 3.0, like, and
Right.
it's not the end of the road. So often you see that. I'm sure you've seen that too. And
Yeah.
it's just so unfortunate that it happens far too often.
Yeah, that I mean, just the fact that you've shared that experience and those stories, I really think it can help so many people hopefully avoid that trap.
Yeah.
Speaking of discrimination, right? It's not new to either of us. You had
hmm
those experiences in college, as you progress through medical school and residency and fellowship and even your current practice. any stories stick out in your mind of discrimination or events you had that you had to overcome?
So off the bat, I went to Howard for med school and Howard for residency. So that's a blessing
Hmm.
because I was shielded from a lot of stuff. At Howard, you forget there's white doctors. Oh, looks like I got a white doctor over there.
Facts.
So, so I mean, you really do. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. So, we're shielded from a lot of the things that go on, and a lot of my colleagues that are black that went to majority other institutions that they had to go through. But I will say, my first kind of eye opening experience, and I don't, honestly, I was a for a lot of the classes in college, and I went to Catholic school, so it's not really. I didn't grow up. I wasn't a black. I grew up in a black neighborhood in Decatur, but a lot of the high school and college, I was kind of the only black person in a lot of my classes. So you kind of recognize who is who, right? You can kind of pick off like this guy is kind of that guy, and you can when you're around a lot of people, you can kind of decipher which kind of person you're with. But I
Right.
remember when I left Howard, because you go into Howard, you're in a bubble. So I was in a
Right.
bubble for like 10 years, and I kind of forgot what it was like sometimes. So I went to fellowship. Like I said, I was the first black fellow. And at Tampa General, there's not a lot of black doctors. And so I remember, I remember, and I didn't even, I took it with the greatest thought, but I went to a patient's room. I have a white coat on, long white coat. I finished med school. I finished residency. I'm really an attending, but I'm just taking a year for fellowship. And I walk into a patient's room to see them for a consult.
Hmm.
And this guy, I walk in his room like, hey, oh, are you, or no, he's, oh, you're the, what are they called? The,
Environmental
nurse
services.
assistant. You're
Oh,
no,
is it? Oh.
yeah, no. You're nursing assistant or nursing aide. He's a nursing aide. Mind you, I have a full white coat on, right? Like, okay. So he's like, oh, can you just get my cup of coffee and bring it back for me real quick? And I'm like, all right, cool. So so I got his cup, got some coffee for him,
Right.
brought it back, put it back down. Said, okay, I'm Dr. Stevens. Now you can have your coffee. I'm here to see your shoulder. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh man. And so that's in fellowship that happened. Now in practice, I practice in I practice in Cocoa Beach, Florida. So to put that in context,
Hmm.
when the rallies from President Trump happened, they're across the street from my house.
Oh.
Right, we're not talking like down the street, like across the street. And so I've taken care of multiple patients with swastikas on the chest. I
Wow.
had one patient that I took care of that came in the clinic. I'll never forget this. And that was very uncomfortable for him. I went to give him an injection in his shoulder. He took his shirt off, give an injection in his shoulder, and on the back of his arms. And his wife is looking at me like stone faced because I have to go behind him to give an injection to his shoulder.
Hmm.
He's got like white on one arm, power on the other arm, the
Oh.
entire length of his triceps. I mean, in big block letters. And I walk by and I'm like, what? Power.
Hmm.
And she's looking dead at me, right? And you see his head kind of drop, right? He doesn't.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, oh wow. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting tattoo. If you want me to take care of your tattoo as well? It's, oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh
I
yeah.
apologize. I was young. So, honestly, I've taken care of a lot of people like that. And it's weird because they've been so nice to me. They've been, some of them like they're like, I'm gonna refer my friends to see you. And you're like, I'm good.
Right.
You don't need to. It's okay. I'm okay. It's a lot of that stuff, but I try to work through it. We all encounter it as physicians, as black physicians. Many times we're the only one in the room a lot of times. So we a lot of the subtle, most times it's the subtle jabs, right? It's the
Right.
subtle hints.
Catch you off guard.
Yeah, nobody really comes at us directly like that anymore. It's going to be the subtle, oh, you went here. Oh, you went to Howard. Oh, that's a black school, right? Oh, kind of trying to diminish your qualities, trying to
Right.
diminish what you do. Little jabs, or they try to, of course, always the affirmative action is a hot topic. Oh, did you go to here because of that? So you deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think some people have prejudices and biases they don't even realize. Sometimes, like, and I think after getting that guy a cup of coffee, I don't think he even realized he didn't mean it, right? He didn't mean to
Hmm.
be. Now, some people mean it, right? You got to
Right.
put those people in their
Right.
place. Like those people, you check
Yep. You
quick.
gotta check them.
You need to look. You've now crossed this line, so I'm going to check you and put you back in your place. And
Yeah.
but some people, you don't have to check everybody. And I think sometimes if we try to check everybody, it gets into that angry mentality where you're looking to check people.
Mhm.
Whereas if you assume that they didn't mean it that way, and then you work from that point of perspective, I think a lot of times it saves you a lot of frustration because you're going to have people that are going to make you angry, but you control your own emotions. You control how you react to situations a lot of times. And I think
Absolutely.
that's how when you're the minority in a majority situation, how you have to handle it to be successful and still keep your pride about yourself.
Absolutely. That's huge. Let's switch gears and talk about an orthopedic surgeon's favorite topic. Get your mind racing, probably.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
We'll keep it PC. We'll just say it's money.
What's that? We
Uh,
broke. We broke.
I'm
What you
just,
talking
I'm just,
about, man?
just messing with you. But in terms of, talking to you previously, things that you wish you'd known more about earlier on, money management. I know you've got a couple businesses, a couple projects you're working on,
Yeah.
and anything that you would like to share with students that are coming up or things that you found that have helped you manage your finances.
Yeah, so as we all know, med school and money are like two topics that don't mix, right? They don't tell you anything about money in med school.
Right.
So you get out, you go from making, I think residents with $50,000 to, the low end of a physician is probably 200, 175, 200. And the high end, a couple
Mm,
million. So
mm,
anywhere in between. So no matter what, as a physician, somebody said to me, no matter what physician you pick or what kind of specialty you pick, you're still going to be in the probably top 10% of the country.
right.
So you need to understand how to manage money, and we don't learn that. And so I would say the first thing I learned uh, when I got out was my credit score was bad. So that's the
Oh,
first thing to manage because I couldn't buy a house, right?
oh no.
And it wasn't because it's funny because it's not like I took a bunch of credit cards out. I just forgot to put my loan in forbearance.
Hmm.
And so just that, and I forgot like 2 years in a row, but I forgot for I think like 3 months, and I was so busy and I forgot. But just that every 30 days I got dinged. Every 30 days I got dinged.
Wow.
And so by the time I got out of residency, I only had one credit card, which is paid off. But because I had so many forbearances and I didn't have a lot of credit history, my credit score, I mean, it was, I don't know, six something. I mean, low sixes.
Ooh,
And, I
yikes.
went to buy a house and I didn't, yeah, that's what they say when I went to buy a house. so, so I was like, look, I make this much on paper, and they're like, they don't care what you make on paper. They want to see you have a better credit score and that you are a reliable person to credit.
Wow.
And so, that's the first thing I would say to students is make sure that you guard your credit score, and if you're not paying your loans, put them in forbearance on time. Um, that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is what I learned is reading a lot of these books is in residency you don't make a lot of money, but you make enough to be comfortable, and you make enough to honestly, if you could, save a little emergency fund. And if you can, I was just telling my mentee that have a plan when you start residency, right? Because you're going to be there for at least 3 to 5 years. So
Hmm.
one thing I wish I had done, and again, buying a house is not the best thing all the time. Understand that. But if you're going to be in residency for, let's say, 5 years, like orthopedic residency, or if you know you're going to be in that place, if you're going to be in that town, probably following residency, it may be a good idea to look at saving enough money your first year or two to buy a small house. I personally prefer houses over condos, but a house or condo, depending on where you live,
Hmm.
so that you're not just paying rent to somebody, right? And so you have some level of wealth accumulating while you're going to residency and while you're training. Um, because many times when you get out of residency, you can now use that to rent when you go to fellowship.
Right.
Or if you're there for 5 years, you've built 3 years of credit, you've built 3 years of equity
Hmm.
into your home, and you can use that as you go on. And so it's a good place to start. Um, and the third thing I say is when you get out of residency, one thing I did was when I finished residency, and there's a book called White Coat Investor. I read it
Yeah.
twice when I got out. Probably one of the best books for beginning your training or your attending life is I lived like I was a rich resident, right? So In residency, you made $50,000,
Yeah.
right? And so what I did was I paid myself a salary of, I think I said $80,000. Which, if you've been living on $50,000, I didn't have a family either, so it depends, right? But I was a
Right.
single guy coming out, so I said, look, I make X amount of dollars. I'm going to pay myself a salary of 80,000 with a $10,000 to $20,000 raise every year until I pay my loans off.
Hmm.
So everything I did was a salary, which was enough to live off of, enough to travel on, enough to have fun on. I wasn't penny pinching, but I wasn't wasting money either.
Right.
And once I paid off my loans, I paid off my student loans in about 2.5 years,
Wow.
right? So I'll just pay chunks. Everything was going towards everything on. So I paid, and I had a lot of loans. I mean, I had I had a couple $100,000 in loans. So I paid off those loans in 2.5 years, and at that point, all the money I was going towards loans, I could shift, and then I bought a house. Right, I worked in my credit for 2.5 years. Then I went to buying a house. Right,
Yeah.
and then after buying a house, now I had money saved up to buy a house. Then I bought a car. So everything, and then I had my Honda for 2.5 years, and I bought a nice car. So everything was it's easy when you get out. Like I mean, we I got a couple friends that got a couple Porsches when they got out. Got a but it stunts your growth financially if you do that when you come out. And it's very easy to do. It's very easy to spend this money because you've never had it. So you
Right.
have to have a plan when you come out. And so I would say those three things. Those three things are things that I'll pay. Make sure you put your stuff in forbearance or pay the interest. By the way, on your loans. That's another way to keep it where it is without escalating dramatically. So either pay the interest or put it in forbearance on time. Um, when you get out, pay yourself a salary that's a reasonable salary, and then put the rest towards paying down your debt aggressively, so that you can be financially free a lot earlier. And the third thing is, if you're going to be in residency for a long time, consider getting a home or something small,
Hmm.
and you can use a doctor's only loan, so you don't have to pay 5% down with no PMI, which is mortgage insurance. So those things that I would do or change if I was coming out.
Great pieces of advice that folks can incorporate. I want to wrap up, man, by talking about this program. You mentioned mentorship and the importance of reaching back, giving back, and guiding that next generation. One of the things that I respect and admire the most about you is how committed you are to that concept. I remember a couple years ago, you had some posts about this Young Docs DC program. I think I was even still at
Hmm.
Howard for part of it. And
Yeah.
last year, I even got to go to the fundraiser or the graduation
Hmm.
ceremony and saw that. But could you take your time, just tell us about this program, what it means and how it works and how people can even get involved?
Yeah, I really appreciate that because that program is my heart. That's my baby and our baby really because three of us created it. So I'll just tell you real quick how it started. So how it started was Dr. Malcolm Woodland, who's PhD, was funny enough was one of our patients in residency, and he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to start a program to mentor kids. Don't really have the structure yet, but I have the idea." And we kind of lost touch. And about a year later, I hit him up like, "Hey, man, what's going on with this program?" And he's like, "Hey, actually, funny enough, I got a grant. I got a grant to start a program." And so him, myself, and Dr. Torley Easterling, and we're all kind of blossomed our careers since then. But we were all in DC at that point in time, fresh, kind of finishing Torrance primary care, and he's now the chief of health of Brooklyn. Like, he's a big time in Brooklyn,
Oh, wow.
big guy in Brooklyn now. Malcolm's the chief clinical psychologist or psychiatrist at the DC jail. So he's like a big time person now. But at that point in time, almost 10 years ago or 8 years ago, we were all just kind of beginning our careers. And so the idea was, let's create a program that we go into Southeast DC or some of the hardest hit places in DC,
Hmm.
and let's go to the high school and let's pull ninth grade males. And we kept it in males because they're the hardest hit by what's going on. They're
Yeah.
the quickest declining numbers in medical school. If you don't know, there's fewer students applying to med school now than in, I think it's like 1976. So the numbers are declining
Yeah.
horribly for black males. Yeah, and applications too.
Oh, wow.
So the pool is shrinking, and the admissions are shrinking. We said, look, let's go and expose them to something different. So our first thing, we went to Anacostia High School, which is one of the um, most underperforming high schools in DC. We went to Blue. We went to a couple high schools in DC, and we sat there with a stethoscope. I remember we had a stethoscope, a table, on high school first day of orientation for ninth grade kids, right? They come in like, what are y'all about? We got a white coat on. They're walking by, and that's how we recruited our first group of students, just literally hanging out in the high school while they're letting out of class.
Wow.
And the guidance counselors would push kids our way. And so what happened was we want to take these kids. So we got six ninth grade males. And the idea was, let's take them out of this environment, put them in something different, expose them to something different, and then push them towards either medicine or whatever. It doesn't matter, but let's give them a different uh, vision of where they're headed. And so what we did was we got funding, and the idea is we took them during on Saturdays. We paid them to come to Howard University's campus on Saturday, and we would tutor them every Saturday on either a topic in medicine, like how the heart works, or a social issue, like gun control or gun rights, or what to do when you're stopped by the police. But we would spend every Saturday with them,
Wow.
and then when they came to Howard's campus, we would pay them. We paid them $20 and just a little bit, like an allowance, right? Just hey, here's a little money to help, because as kids, allowance really makes a difference in high school. $20 in high school makes a big difference.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that adds up. So we pay them a little bit of money, and they come in, and it was a great program. The kids come in, and we still and we're really blossoming now. But the kids would come in, our first group, and we sit down with them every Saturday and mentor them, tutor them, and then the summertime, we would take them out and put them on Howard's campus, like a summer program, and we'd pay for them to stay in the dorms all summer long. And they stay in the dorms all summer, and we have them do med style classes. We take them down to the school and have a med student come teach them how the heart works, how physiology of the lungs, physiology of the heart. We take them to the cadaver lab. This is how the heart actually looks. And then during the next summer, we take them, or next year, we take them out in the community and have them do health programs. So they do
Hmm.
diabetes or glucose checks. They do blood pressure checks in the community in Southeast DC. And these kids got so known out there. Oh, yeah, y'all, the young doctors. Okay, we know y'all. So they like the community could recognize them
Wow.
and really rally behind these kids. And so from there, our program kind of grew to other parts of pulling kids from other schools in DC. So now it's been amazing because we've been around for 8 years, 7 years now, 7 8 years, and the students are all doing great. Our most recent group of students just did their college signing day. All of them are going to college.
Wow.
All our past 3 years, every student has gone to college, and that's because what we incorporated after 2 years is we now take them to college tours. We drove them from DC to Louisiana in a bus.
Whew.
Imagine 12 high school kids in a bus from DC to New Orleans. We drove
all,
them from DC to Atlanta.
all
You know,
boys. They were
all
must.
boys.
They were probably musty
Man,
as I don't know what.
musty, yelling, screaming. They're eating food, leaving food everywhere. Man, it was so. I mean, we took them from DC to Virginia, and we take them there. We took them DC to New York, and so we take them there so they can see what college campus is like. We bring them back and we do the applications with them through the year. So when
Wow.
you hit senior year, day one applications due, it's already done. And the mindset becomes, I don't know if I'm going to college, or maybe I'll go to college to, of course I'm going to college. Why would I, what? And so college becomes a natural next step. And that is what I think I have loved so much about what our program has done. And because these kids are already amazing, right? They're already great kids. But sometimes if you don't see college as a guaranteed future, it's easy to get sidetracked, right? If you don't see medicine as your goal, then it's easy to say, well, I'll just do something else. And so
Right.
these kids are rock stars. I mean, they're all going to, I mean, they all got well, three of them got scholarships. They got into multiple schools. I mean, we had signing day, and they're all hype about college, and it just builds that desire to do, like, oh yeah, high school's cool, but I'm going to college. Like, high school is cool, but there's a next step. There's a natural next step, and that's kind of where they're headed. And so this program has really done it for the kids, and we transition. We're virtual because of COVID, but we're right back at it. We're still, like, we kick off our program. Yes, actually today is the first day.
Wow.
We're doing classes online now. The kids have to log in online all summer long, and they take classes with people teaching them. So we have doctors, like I'm taking to the operating room virtually and doing a surgery virtually with the kids. So that's the kind of thing that Young Doctors is doing. Again, youngdoctorsdc.com. And, really would love anybody that wants to get involved. www.youngdoctorsdc.org. And again, volunteer, donate. Donate is always helpful because 100% of the funds goes towards the kids. We don't get a salary. We don't do it because we want money. We pay our money to help. And so for us, it's because we care about kids. It's because we care about their future. And, like you helped us out big time. We really appreciate your help as well. And coming to the white coat ceremony. It's my heart, man. It means everything.
And there's no way people can donate online, right? They can't do that.
Of course you can. So yeah, if you go to the website, we have it all linked up. Just please come on and donate. Any amount helps. $50 is a pay for a Saturday academy for 3 kids, wow. Right? Or 2 kids and a half.
Awesome. Dr. Stephens, thank you so much for joining us. I know you had a super busy day of clinic today. If people want to get in touch with you, where can they reach you at?
Yeah, you can reach me at The Surgeon Story on Instagram. I'm only on Instagram, by the way. I don't have time to get on everything anymore. But on Instagram, The Surgeon Story. So if you send me a DM, I always respond to those typically. That's the best way to reach me, actually.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming and joining us. I know our listeners are going to enjoy hearing this episode and learning from you.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of the Black Doctors Podcast. If you like what you heard, please share, leave a message or a comment as well. Tune in next week to hear more of our stories told by us on the Black Doctors Podcast. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening to the Black Doctors Podcast. We're here because representation matters.